Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Windshield Time, the podcast where we help you use your windshield time to turn learning into earning. Windshield Time is brought to you by Service Excellence. I'm Chris Elmore, and joining me again, we keep doing this, is Harold James Walker Jr., also known as J-Dub. So, on this episode, what do you do when a customer thinks they know more than you? Stay tuned. So I guess you have a moniker, a handle now.
Well, J-Dub.
Your call sign
Yeah.
is J-Dub.
It's been that for a while.
I mean, you've always had it, but I mean, you know, profound. I don't know where this is going.
Well,
James, tell me the last book you read.
Dadgum, man. Okay.
I'm assuming the Bible, but you do that on a regular basis. But what's the last book you read?
I listened to a Jack Reacher novel on my trip.
Which one?
Dude, man, I forget. I've listened to all of them like twice or three times.
I'm on book 22.
The new Reacher novels are not very good.
Out of 31.
The new Reacher novels are not great. His son started writing them.
Well, they're formulaic, and after you've read 20
his son
some
starts
of them,
writing them is the problem, and it's just a completely different.
Well, you told me that, but
the one Willing to Die For was what it was. So, I mean, they're all the same. Who cares what the title is?
Yeah, I'm not to that one. I'm on past tense where he goes to New Hampshire to find out where his dad's from.
They're all formulaic, but they're great. It's like you're reading it. It's like the cotton candy of the literary world. It's it's not a whole bunch there, but it's exactly what you'd want it to be, and it's not trying to like dig deep.
Yeah, I usually get through about 2 a week. Just reading at night and in the morning. Okay, what other books have you read?
Man, I am not reading it yet, but I'm about to. 10x is easier than 2x. Have you heard about that? So,
yep. No, I've had Todd and I got that one like early last year sometime.
What do you think about that one? Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. I'm currently reading through Outlive by Peter Attia, or listening to it. Dr. Peter. He talks about healthcare 3.0 and longevity and how we treat what he calls the 4 horsemen, and I can't remember all of them. But the things that lead to death, he talks about how medicine 2.0 treats those when it's too late rather than treating them before they become evident, because there's these markers and everything before any of that stuff shows up that you can do something about. And so his thinking is that the medicine he practices, he wants to take someone, let's say you're going to live 80 years. Most of the time now, people who live about that long, they go through a period of 5 to 7 years of declining health and declining lifestyle and all that kind of stuff until they kind of fade out. But what he'd rather do is live to 79, fade out over a year, and be gone.
Yeah.
And so it's about maintaining longevity in terms of quality of lifestyle rather than just life. And that medicine tends to extend life, but not extend the lifestyle.
Interesting, yeah. That's good.
Or quality of life, I should say.
Huh.
And, I think about it, just some of the things he talks about in the book, and my grandma lived that way. My grandma, she was a single mom, really pretty much the whole time she was married to my mom's dad. And she grew up in the Depression. She worked a farm, and she kept my grandma at 80 years old was still cutting her own grass and taking care of a 1/4-acre garden. And she got up to like 87 years old and
just one day
was dead by the time she was 91, but she had a great quality of life. So I'm reading through that. That's kind of heavy, but I'm reading through that. Just went back through 5 Dysfunctions of a Team in preparation for some presentation I'm doing. Talking about accountability.
Is that a conversation you and I are going to be having later?
Yeah, and I'm reading that. What's that?
Because of the conversation you and I are going to be having with me later. You need a
Yeah, we're
yeah,
having a
exactly.
one-on-one after this, James. But none of that's relevant to that conversation we're going to have. So let's get into this because while it's not common, I think technicians get into situations where the customer thinks they
Sure.
know more than them a lot. Not a lot, but they do get in those situations. And usually it's met with
Right.
contempt,
Even
when a customer thinks
yeah,
they know more.
bitterness. Like, what'd you call me
And
for? Right.
yeah,
So you think you can do it?
that's
Right.
exactly right. And so but this is one of those things that as a technician, you have the context, you focus on the outliers more than you focus on
Mhm.
the everyday. I think that's just as people, not
Sure.
just technicians, but as people. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a presentation to some technicians and asked them to come up with a scenario. And the scenario they came up with, it was an HVAC company. They came up with a scenario of a system that was 11 years old with a bad coil. It couldn't be fixed. It was a bad coil. And so by the time we were done, it was like $6,000 to repair it, and whatever, 14, 15 to replace the whole system. And so the assumption was it's a bad idea and they're not going to do that. But these guys were like, "Oh yeah, we get people do that all the time. We get people that pay $6,000 to fix it rather than $14,000 to replace it." I was like, "Okay, well, tell me more about it. Who is that and the other thing?" And they knew remembering all this stuff. And I said, "Okay, let me ask you a question. Out of 100 customers that you go to, no cool calls, how many of them are bad coils, catastrophic
Yeah.
bad? You can't fix them." They said 10%. So okay, so out of that 10%, okay, now that's out of those 10 out of 100. How many of them would actually replace it or repair it rather than replace it? They said 2. I said, okay, so we're gonna play out a scenario that 2% of your calls end up being. And so that's just an example of how the outlier
Sure.
sticks in someone's mind. And they're like, well, yeah, well, how do we handle it? Well, it happens 2% of
Doesn't
the time.
matter.
It doesn't
Right.
matter. Right. And so that's why we sometimes focus on the outliers. And that's what we're going to do today. So what happens, when a customer thinks they know more than you? And let's break it down. Let's think, let's say, where did they get the
Mhm.
information? What's the psychology of all this? And then we'll talk about how you as a technician or salesperson handle it.
Well, wouldn't you agree,
Okay.
Chris, that
So
even
first,
at the door, there's signs that this person might feel like they're educated? They're not going to tell you right when you show up, "Hey, I know more than you. Shut up." That typically happens later, but they're going to give you signs that they think they know what they're
yeah.
doing at the door, right? Or pretty soon after.
Yeah. And they're very subtle, but think about it. Let's back up even further than that. Where did they get their information from?
I mean, contextually, we don't know. Possibly the internet. Possibly they're a bit of a handyman. They do some of the DIY stuff. Possibly YouTube.
Could be. Could be. I think most of it today, even someone who's a handyman is probably going to look
Mhm.
something up and figure out how to do it. Uh, they
Their
think they're going
education
to
from
get that
another HVAC
information and think they
company
know it.
who worked on past, right?
It could be. Well, the last guy said this. Now, if they're believing so strongly in what the other company
Right.
told them, then that other company did something right. Now, if they haven't repaired it, maybe they did
Right.
something wrong in handling an objection. But that other company did something right in their education. And certainly we've had that happen to us before where we've been that other
Yeah.
company that provided them a great education and got them to know more than they knew before, and they use it against us. But let's focus on that customer who has information. Most likely today they're getting it from watching a YouTube video or reading an article online
Sure.
or something like that. It's not practical knowledge they've gained. And even in the situations that you have someone like you described as a handyman, where I did my service was in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Master Jet Base at Oceana. It's the world's largest Navy
Bunch of
base.
engineers around there.
There's the headquarters of the Atlantic Fleet is there. There's all kinds of Navy around there, and there's all kinds of Navy guys who worked on complex
Right.
machinery and systems in the Navy and did a lot of stuff like that. And because they have that knowledge, some of it can translate to everyday
Right.
stuff in the mechanical space, but a lot of it doesn't. And you might get some people who think that, oh, yeah, because I did this. Look, I worked on nuclear submarines. I can
Right.
work on an air conditioner. Well, maybe, but that's not your
Sure.
expertise. It's mine, and, especially in the old days when boats were powered by diesel engines and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's some still out there, but um, I'd be going to a house that had a boiler, and you go into the basement, and hanging on one of the pipes was a little notebook and a pencil on a string. And I actually had some enginemen in the Navy that had retired, some chiefs, and they would go down and they would write down what the boiler pressure was, what the temperature was,
Right.
and things like that. Anyway, but you get people like that, and there's a couple of things we got to remember. And thinking back again, we're they call this prepping to the next time we handle this. We got to understand we're watching the game film here. How do they know what they know? Well, they might have some previous experience in a mechanical field. They might have watched some YouTube videos. They might be an engineer, and they think that
Right.
translates because they can
Technical.
do block and plane physics and all
Right.
kinds of other stuff, right? So, but no matter what, the number one thing we can't do is discount that knowledge. Okay. And that might sound, contrary to where we think we're going to end up with this topic, but we can't just dismiss
Yeah.
it, because the moment we do, we dismiss the
Mhm.
person. And when we dismiss the knowledge that then dismisses the person, we can forget about it. It's not going anywhere.
Well, I would say that when I've had this conversation, sometimes this is a higher C personality, and at the door they're like, "Well, yeah, I've been doing some research, and
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah." I'll ask technicians how you respond to that, and a number of times technicians will go, "Well, hey, what'd you call me for?" Or, "Listen, you called me. I'm the expert." This defensiveness pops up, and I challenge them, instead of pushing away, pull closer. If they say, "You know what, I'm a bit of a DIYer, I understand it's probably going to be the compressor failure due to overheating or overamping," you're able to say, "Oh man, most of the time I don't talk with guys who know what we're talking about. Do you know what you're doing here? Man, that's awesome, man. Most of the time I'm having to explain and educate. It doesn't sound like I'm gonna have to do that with you." You can actually shine somebody up
Right.
in a way that allows them to pull you in closer. And if you come into conflict with their intellect, you're going to push them away. But if you absorb it and almost validate it, they'll be much more willing at times to listen to what you have to say, right?
Yeah. And I think that's good. You embrace it. And I think the other way you were describing it was people getting
Defensive, right?
defensive, technicians getting defensive. And you can't get
Yeah.
defensive either. And so, all wrapped up together is, don't get defensive, embrace that knowledge, don't discount that knowledge, because it's easy. Someone who watches a YouTube video for 20 minutes thinks they know something that you have spent 5 years learning. Or not, maybe not 5 years learning, because let's face it, you can learn something
Yeah.
very quick, especially today. I mean, I even think about technicians that come into the trades now. They can learn so much that it took me years to learn, because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have videos and stuff to watch. I went to school for it, worked out of a workbook at school, and then I was on the job doing it. And certainly I could have taken more condensed courses. I could have gone away to a residential program where I stayed for 3 weeks and learned something. I could have taken a college level course at a community college where I went, 3 days a week, whatever. I could have condensed the time for my learning to much shorter than it was, but I was at the limits of technology at that point in time. And so nowadays, though, think about it. If you need, like, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to work on your own car
Yeah.
recently? Okay. And what do
Well,
you do?
you YouTube it.
Do you call the
Yeah.
dealership? Do you call a mechanic
Use
and ask them, or
YouTube.
what do you do? You pull out your phone and
Right.
watch a YouTube video.
And what's interesting about that
Yeah.
on YouTube is guys will see the work that needs to be done and realize the work itself is not
Mm-hmm.
super complex, but they don't necessarily have the tools that a mechanic has. So what they do is they negate the value of the work, but choose to call somebody else because they don't have the tools to do the application, right? So like, hey, it's a real simple thing. I just didn't have the tools to do it. And in so doing, they're
Yeah.
undermining the actual value of what you're bringing to the table because they sell it on YouTube as a simple fix, you know?
Yeah, and that's
Right.
offensive to me. Naturally, as a trained, experienced technician, that would
Sure.
be offensive to me. And I just got to tuck that, though. I got to keep that down because what I know is knowledge is easy to gain, but experience only
Yeah.
happens over time. And I think that these days, with how people learn, because this is really all part of even a customer learning something and thinking they know something. Just like you take a technician who's just come out of trade school, has no practical experience doing anything, and then they watch a bunch of YouTube videos and think they know how to do a thing. And yes, I think you can accelerate the knowledge, but I think you said on a previous podcast that you can't speed
Right.
up time for
Right.
expertise and experience. And so that's the piece, that's the value right there. Because and also again it goes to defensiveness. As a technician, I have to let go of the knowledge. The theoretical knowledge is not the value as much as it used to be. Okay? I know that sounds what? But realistically it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, think about replacing a breaker in an electrical panel. I know all my electricians are like, "Oh, I hate it when customers do that." The bottom line is you can watch a video on replacing a circuit breaker and you watch it enough times, you could probably do it. Now, will it be done exactly perfect? Probably not. Will we get the exact breaker? Maybe not. But here's what won't happen unless it's mentioned in the video. What won't happen is checking every other connection for tightness. You can't get the experience of, you don't have the experience of looking at breakers that physically look bad in a way to an expert that they might to a layman. Because if I opened a panel and a breaker had
Hmm.
melted, you would
Right.
notice that, right? Even though you're not an electrician. But when it comes to changing a breaker, there's a lot of mystery around electricity. And so that takes
Right.
experience to get through. But physically watching a video and understanding how a breaker is changed, and I think that's what we got to go on here. The title of this was, what do you do when a customer thinks they know more than you? Well, it's not that they know more than you necessarily. They just understand what you know better. Think about that. They understand what you know better. So, for instance, if you watched me replace a
Yeah.
compressor and you had watched a video on replacing a
Right.
compressor, first of all, the video is not going to look exactly like what you have unless you happen to find a video of someone replacing a
Exact
compressor on the
same
type of
unit.
system,
Right.
the brand you have. You can watch that video and understand, okay, you got to recover the refrigerant into an approved bottle using an approved machine, especially with the new refrigerant, blah, blah, blah. You do all that. You replace the compressor and, oh, don't forget to do this and do that and do this and do that and all. And you understand that there's work involved, but it doesn't look
Right.
complicated. And we drop that veil a little bit. And I think that's at the heart of this is the customer doesn't know more than you, obviously, but I think their understanding of it is a confidence they have. And I think that's the same thing that happens because I know all the old crusty veterans out there in the trades are going, yeah, that's just like these young kids coming into the trade. Because if you think about it, that guy that's only been doing it for 6 months, he's probably watched a lot of YouTube videos on it because that's how he was brought up. You learn those things. The knowledge part of it, the understanding part of it is accelerated, but the hands-on experience is not. You can't do that other than
Hmm.
by time, right? So the customer is coming at it from the same perspective a lot of times if that's how they're educated. Is they think they understand what you do because they've seen somebody do it in a video. Because I think like right now, if you were to Google how to replace a compressor in a residential air conditioner, Google that and see what you get.
I don't have my
And I know we
keyboard in
can't put it
front of
up
me.
on the
Hold on.
screen, Alex, but whatever.
But go ahead, keep talking while I do it.
So yeah, so we could find that video. We could find a video on how to replace a 2-pole breaker. We could find a video on how to hang a ceiling fan. We could find a video on how to pull and reset a
Replacing a
toilet.
compressor, start to
Right.
finish. YouTube HVAC school, 56 minutes.
Okay, and how many minutes is it?
56.
56 minutes. Okay. So that's a very technical explanation. Somebody's not going to watch that
Yeah,
video,
how to replace your compressor, HVAC, step by
right?
step, 15 minutes. There's a different one.
Yeah. Okay. And so a consumer might watch that, customer might watch that video for 15 minutes, and now they have an understanding of what goes into the work, but it may not look that complex. But like you said, they're going to focus on the
Yeah.
tools they need, right? And so I think there's enough of a separator that people won't think they can do it themselves. Because I don't think that's what we're dealing with here. I don't think we're dealing with people necessarily that think they can do it themselves. Because, as you said, they don't have the tools. So if they watch the video, they understand that they don't have the tools to do it. So that's a plus, actually, that the customer understands that there's specialized tools and knowledge to use the specialized tools in order to do the work.
Yep.
Right? I think that's a plus. I think on the negative side would be that they overestimate the knowledge they've gained.
For sure.
And
They see
understanding
an
they gained.
8-minute
They
video.
overestimate
I saw
that.
one of them was 8 minutes, and they're like, "Oh, I understand the high hit points," but they don't understand the connections between those and the expertise needed. Right?
Yeah, and the reality of it is they're condensing probably a 2 to 3 hour repair and replacing a compressor
Right.
into 8 minutes. And so there's necessarily some people might look at it and go, that's no big deal. Some people might look at it, wow, that's way more complicated than I thought. So it could really go either way. So I really think what we're talking about here is not a customer with more knowledge than you, but a customer who thinks that their
Of what you
understanding
do.
is they overestimate
Yeah.
their understanding of the topic. So what do? Number one, we don't get defensive. Because I think it's when someone typically what happens when someone thinks they have an understanding of something that you are an expert at is when they push back, you automatically assume it's a challenge to your knowledge. And so it's very easy for you to be offended and easy for you to become defensive. And again, depending on their personality type, the way they deliver it could also play a part. Right? We've all been there where we've had customers that they have watched a video or they think they have some knowledge, or maybe they have a parallel, maybe they've got tool knowledge and mechanical knowledge, but they don't have specific knowledge of what we're doing. And maybe they minimize what it takes to do the job. Well, that only take you what? It shouldn't take you more than an hour. I mean, that's what I found out, is it shouldn't take more than an hour. And it's very easy when they push back like that for you to become defensive, and you just can't. You can't be defensive. We have to make sure that we're still being open to what they're saying, because we cannot, again, if we dismiss their knowledge or their understanding, then we dismiss the person. If we dismiss the person, we've lost. We've lost them. And it's going to be a battle. I think that keeping open, and you have to be ready to disarm them gently, because you know what? I've had customers, I just love to physically take their head and rub their face in whatever I just did. Right? And preferably it's when I'm doing mastic or something nasty like cleaning out a drain pan. I just want to rub their face in it. But we have to be ready to disarm them. And I go back to what you were saying, about how, oh, wow, you know about this stuff then. That's awesome, because it makes it a whole lot easier for me to communicate what's going on and the severity of the need here. And of course, that we're going to have to do this, and this because of this, and this.
You're bringing up another key point.
And you're acting like they know because they said they did. So I'm going to just take that at face value. And what happens is, because I'm not dismissing it, I'm acting like they know. Now, you have to be careful not to become a smart ass here.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. But you certainly can disarm them gently by making these comments. And a lot of times they have to agree with it, or they're going to look like they don't know.
And I had a guy who I worked with a long time ago that did this really well. Now, again, the smartass comment, I agree. But his technique for disarming somebody was to ask them a technical question that they probably have no clue about, but we're assuming based on what they've told us that they would know, like, hey, I've checked this and this. Oh, great, man. Did you figure out what the delta T was? Or, what the CFM is? Or just asking questions that get them out of their depth quick, that it passively allow the customer to know that they are talking above their understanding.
Yeah, and they need to be able to make a
Right,
gentle
right. You can't
retreat.
be like, oh yeah, tell me what the RLAs are. So there's got to be a
Yeah, well, what's the rotations per minute of the dual cam shifter and overhead
right.
schnibbling pin?
So they need to be able to.
Gotcha. It doesn't have an overhead
It's
schnibbling pin.
underhead on the 2023 to 2024 systems. Okay.
220, 221, whatever it takes. You know what
Is
movie
that
that's from?
Fletch? Everything's Mr. Mom.
Mr.
Oh
Mom,
yeah, everything's ball bearings these days. That's what I know.
Michael
Mr.
Keaton.
Mom, Michael Keaton.
All ball bearing
That's what
is
I said.
Fletch.
Yeah, everything's ball bearings these days. Awkward
Yes,
pause.
it is. Continue. You were
No,
making a you
I
make,
already
making a
said it.
point,
No,
and I
that's it.
derailed you.
So being thoughtful about how you disarm.
Yeah. So yeah, because they got to be able to gently retreat from the high ground, and like they
Yeah.
know more than you. And a lot of times they'll admit it. Oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh really? Okay. Okay. So the other thing is when you're dealing with a person like this, even if after you've disarmed, it doesn't matter. And this really goes without saying with everything, with every customer in every situation, provide physical evidence. Seeing is believing. Physical evidence does it every time. Show them the damaged component. Show them the dirty thing. Show them, put the dirt in a plastic bag and show it to them. Put the nastiness in a
And
Ziploc
have
bag
it
and show it to them.
contrasted.
Provide
Have it
physical
contrasted.
evidence.
Have it
What's that?
contrasted against what it should look like versus what it does. Because a lot of times
Yeah,
you need to
absolutely. You can do that
have
too. Mm-hmm.
the reality of what is, but the expectation of what should be to create distance between those.
Well, and that's really, you provide context, which provides,
Contrast.
and then that helps you provide
Right.
contrast, right? And so physical evidence doesn't lie. Now, I can honestly say I've been with a customer that denied the physical evidence before. Most of I happen to be an HVAC technician back when, and so I remember taking a white paper towel, wiping it across a blower wheel, and clumps came off. Not just discolored. I mean, there were clumps of cat hair and pet hair, whatever else, and dirt on it. And the customer and then I showed them, because I was able to slide the blower wheel out of the bottom of the furnace, and I was able to show them. I put my flashlight on it. You could clearly see the difference of the blade of the blower wheel with very minimal dirt on it, where I'd wiped it, and then right next to it, caked with dirt, and the dirt on the paper towel. And they're saying that's not that dirty, because they didn't want to backtrack to having a dirty system. So that will happen, but it's not. I mean, it's less than 1% of the time. It's not worth focusing on. What is worth focusing on is the beginning of this. Because if you don't handle it right from the beginning, it's going to be too late at the end, and it's going to be worse to deal with. And so you were saying at the very beginning, when you go to the door sometimes, and it may be straightforward, like, hi, I'm Chris Elmore from Service Excellence. Are you James Walker? Yes. Well, good to meet you, James. So I understand I'm here because your system is running, but it's blowing warm air. Yeah. So I checked online, and I think the compressor's out. So when they say that, they think they have an understanding of their problem. Okay, and it may not mean they think they know more than you, whatever, but they think there's a higher level of understanding for them. And you have to deal with that, because if they think it's the compressor's gone out, then you have to address that. And maybe it's, oh wow, well, a lot of things can cause the problem you're having, but if you've done some research, you think it's a compressor, we'll start there. But first, I'd like to start at the thermostat. By the way, thanks for calling us out. Is it okay if we start inside? And so I'm still staying on track, and I'm acknowledging what they said, and they've done some research, and that's great. So now I'm setting the context, the relationship. I didn't dismiss what they said. I'm thanking them for getting ahead of the game here and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so we just got to be careful with that. But it might come out in the very beginning. But the moment you hear it, acknowledge it, find a way to thank them for doing the homework or being diligent or whatever, because that is a way to disarm them
Yeah.
gently by, okay, because they also think, by the way, we talk about psychology, the customer that's done some research also probably feels that the expert is going to refute what they know. Think about that. You know, they're going to, they think, well, I've done research and maybe they're coming out to sell me
Right.
something and I'm not going to let them sell me something because I have information. Right. So these situations are can be awkward sometimes, but if you do these things, don't get defensive, maintain your professional opinion. Don't change it just because they think they know more. Be ready to disarm them gently. We don't want to go in and say, well, why'd you call me, or get defensive with those kind of things. Just make it gentle. Let them have a graceful retreat off of it. Not necessarily thank them, but acknowledge they're part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Even though they might be. Right.
Right. Provide physical evidence and document everything, no matter what. Document it. Take pictures, have the physical evidence, because that's hard to argue with. And it doesn't matter what a YouTube video said if you've got physical evidence. Okay? So just be ready to do that. Again, it's delicate, and it's not going to happen to you that often, but it can happen sometimes. And especially nowadays, it's like we said, it's so much easier to get what you think is knowledge or get educated and have an understanding because of the internet and technology these days. You can just do that so quickly. And so we just got to be sure that we're not discounting the customer, dismissing their information because we dismiss them. And if we do that, it's just so much more work to try to bring them back. So just remember that. So if you want to talk to me more about it, you can talk to me at Chris. I don't even know what I'm talking about. At Elmore@serveextra.com. You can email me, or you can call me at 254-733-7109. And if for some reason you want to talk to James.
James@serveextra.com. 254-230-5266.
Go to our website, www.serveextra.com. We made some changes recently. I help you easier to find stuff. You can use the search bar. You can find past episodes of Windshield Time and all the other podcasts we've done, blog articles, lots of free downloads and stuff to help you. Also, keep up to date with our workshops that are coming up towards the end of the year. And also drop us a message, like and share the podcast. Send us suggestions for topics. We always want to hear those and get those recorded for you when we can. So, James, what do we do here at Service Excellence?
Service Excellence, we turn earning into learning. That's the best one yet.
Did you say earning into
Dang
learning?
It,
or learning
I did.
Into earning?
I did. I said learning.
That's okay. Bye, everybody.